Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Let's please start with the flag salute. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Good to see everyone. Happy summer. Sure, summer weather for sure. Indy, nice to see you. Thanks for coming. Yeah, you're here to see the really exciting topic of budget building, aren't you? Riveting. Four board members here. Dan is online with us on I-5 in Seattle area. Be careful, Dan. Don't drive off the road. And we're glad that you're with us. So let's get started. We've got lots to go do here, and this is our July business meeting. So we'll get started. On the agenda, we had no official district highlight. However, I'm calling an audible, and we do have a district highlight. And I would like to take just a moment to recognize our superintendent for completion of his first full year as our superintendent. Appreciate your leadership. We appreciate all the things that you've done for the district and for the board and for the staff and for the community. We hope that you have found personal and professional growth and a good place here, because we certainly feel like we have a good leader in our district. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice audible. Thank you.
Next would be district comments or public comments, and I see no one in the audience, so we'll move past that. Regular meeting minutes of June 22nd. We need to approve those. We've had a chance to read those. I saw nothing in there on my end, so I would entertain a motion by someone.
I'll move we approve the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes.
Questions or discussion by anyone? All right, Dan, can you hear us okay? Okay, maybe not. Okay, well, we'll vote. We're voting on the meeting minutes. All those in favor indicate with an aye.
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 You opposed? Okay, that passes. And now we'll move on to the consent agenda. There's a few items here. Human Resources Action Sheet, some new hirees, a couple of late resignations. Any comments to make there? Chris?
No comments on that. You can see we continue to have attrition in the district. And once again, just to thank our directors and our administrators, assistant principals and principals in hiring timely. Postings are going out right away when we receive a resignation, and we're getting fairly well staffed up at this point where there's not too many positions left to fill. So I'll give an update on the overall attrition process and the new hires at the August meeting.
Very good. Okay. I did see Kendra. I always
Yes.
mess up her last name, but
Brenta, yep.
yeah, had moved on. Kevin had mentioned she took a position at ESD 105.
And Alexa Ranger as well.
We'll miss her and wish her well and thank her for her services.
Yeah.
Here in
Also
Selah.
saw on the human action or the human resource action sheet, Bruno's back.
Yes, Troy Torno is the new superintendent of Ellensburg School District. And Michaela, his wife, is coming on board with us at the high school as one of our campus engagement folks. So,
Good. Oh,
yeah.
nice. I missed it. Good. All right. Payroll goods and services, anything to highlight there?
Just one thing I'd like to highlight in the goods and services is our expenditure paid to Ted Brown Music for $16,522. We had between the middle school and high school, we provided funding through the levy sources as we budget every year to support our band program. Not all of our students and families can afford to purchase instruments. And so we have an opportunity for them to rent them through the school district at a very reasonable price for students. So we put money into that to keep instruments in our inventory. So this is not the full expenditure, but I just wanted to highlight that we do continue to prioritize our music programs at a higher level, and like our athletics and so that we give opportunities for all students.
So the rentals through the district are instruments that are Ted Brown inventory, basically, and then
We own them, we purchase them, and a lot of times they're the larger instruments that are pretty expensive. And so, yeah, here, right next to me, Stephanie was part of the band program here, so
nice.
that was the only thing I was gonna highlight this month.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Also in the consent agenda is our first reading for policy 6700, which is nutrition and physical fitness. We'll have a chance to adopt that policy a month from now. And this is first reading, but I think Kevin's got a comment about it.
Just some things that I would call your attention to that have been the work of committee of people, part of the policy requirements, implementation, well, families, and others. This has been instrumental along. There are two things that I think I want to call your attention to. The one is in the first paragraph with regards to trying to move up the schedule 20 minutes of time prior to recess. And it gives the ability for me to try to do that and to try to remove barriers. There's no requirement. They do believe it's best practice. So we try to do that. In some buildings, that's easier said than done. What it does is it stops students from bypassing the meals there. They have quality time to keep their meal before bypassing.
Interesting. I had 6 middle schoolers at my house this afternoon for a little swim. And I brought that up, not officially about the policy, but about lunch and recess kind of connected. And I said, we hear that some kids just skip lunch and go out to recess. Oh yeah, we got lots of friends that do that. So yeah, they're all about it. Well, then I'll add the second part of that policy to look at is on the second page. And it's the backpack program. And on the front end, know that this is not a WASDA language. This is a Selah School District program. And it's we're partnering with the Selah Food Bank on a backpack program that's designed to provide food and supplies for students in our district over the weekend that may need it. And the financial and in-kind contributions that the district makes is set up to be used only for the students in our district. And the way I guess I look at it is it's another way that the district can help provide for our community and be good partners with a noteworthy local organization. So that's the other main part of this. Anything to add to that?
We're really excited about the opportunity, and they approached us, which was really neat, that they wanted to be able to have a good, solid partnership with the school district and to help those students most in need. And it is over the weekends. Our nutrition program within the school district doesn't provide meals through the weekend. So this would give us the opportunity to support students in need. And all of that determination of which students is all highly confidential. Those students are selected through our home and family support folks. And so the food bank, their part of this partnership is to purchase, gather, and bag the food that would be delivered to each student on a Friday, each needy student on a Friday. We may have 100 to 250 students in any given week. They haven't all been identified yet. But then the school district's responsibility would be to hand the meals to the students. So it's all a confidential process.
Sure, good.
We talked about what that would look like physically, keeping it.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, and it's not done in class.
Yeah, not done in class. And that's part of the reason for the backpack and the type of the backpacks. It looks very normal, but the contents is what's different inside.
this is our first.
Yep.
I don't know if this. Reading through this.
Thank you for bringing it up.
or if it, I don't know.
Well, I know the WASDA policy itself doesn't have any language associated with that, but it's definitely, we can follow up. I don't have an update on it tonight.
No, but I do recall, I don't have an official formal update, but I do have recall having a conversation with Colton in that it was part of the freshman, one of the freshman classes. Indy, do you recall anything with that?
You
CPR?
take CPR in a class.
I thought it was part of a health requirement, which is a required course within, but I'll follow up with Colton again and get back.
Good. Okay, so that is our first reading on that policy. So if there's anything else between now and August, you'll have a chance to visit about it again next month when we bring it back. The next one on the consent agenda is donations, and there are two donations from the Wilbur Rep Foundation. Again, they have been over generous with additional donations of another $1 million, plus a second one of 150,000. And so, Chris, I'll ask you to just. fill us in.
Just to provide an overview, this is, we're blessed from this family, Wilbur Rep. Once again, he had included the Selah School District and the Kent School District in his will, if you will, no pun intended. And he estimated that we would potentially receive up to $4 million. And sure enough, we've received $3,365,000,000. And it's designated to be spent on a tech center, CTE Tech Center, and it will be the Wilbur Rep Tech Center when we can afford to build a tech center. The cost of the facility will be much more than the 3.6 million, but it's just a wonderful thing for the school district to be able to have that money tucked away, reserved in our capital projects fund until such a time that we're able to build the facility. And Nyla Webster, who is Wilbur's sister, she's still alive and lives in Yakima. And I spoke with her yesterday, and she was very appreciative of the fact that on behalf of the administration and the school board that I gave her a call and thanked her. And we're just very fortunate for our students to be able to benefit from that down the road. So I will be contacting her, and hopefully she can attend either the, well, maybe the August or the September business meeting, so you can meet her as well.
Would love to formally thank.
Yeah.
What are we doing with the money in the meantime? Is it?
It's in the bank and it's invested every month, and it's the interest and the donation will remain in the capital projects fund until such a time that we build the tech center. I let her know yesterday that we'll be recruiting and meeting with the facilities committee this fall. And then throughout the year, we'll be developing what our long-term plan, a new long-term plan for our CAP projects. And I let her know that I would reach back out to her at the end of that process and let her know if kind of what we're targeting for. I mean, there's never any guarantee on that, but at least we will have some more information for her.
So we done any press releases on this through Heidi or anything to start building excitement, because it's gonna take a bond, it's gonna be
Yep.
in coordination, obviously, with the bond, they get a tech center done. To kind of start the excitement for the community potentially.
I have that on my list to talk to Kevin about and to figure out what the timing would be. I think it's definitely a good PR thing to put out there, but maybe it's when the long range plan gets drafted and that's part of that. I don't know. That's something that we can figure out. It's a good idea. I think we need to have some press on it. And for
For the school district and for Wilbur Rep and his will and his wants to provide it to public schools.
It just knee-jerk reaction. It seems like maybe if it's part of the long-range facility report, that it gets a little bit buried, and maybe a feature of, if this is kind of the last wave of significant money,
Mhm.
maybe it's a highlight on its own.
Sure. That's definitely something that we can talk about and get rolling. And maybe it's timed with when we have her right after she comes in and meets
So
with.
there you go.
Yeah.
Like it. Excellent. Good. Well, we're we'll be forever grateful to that estate and to the family for sure. All right, and then the last thing on the consent agendas are overnight travel requests. There are 5 of them. 3 of them are FFA related. One's a leadership in Wenatchee, leadership conference in Wenatchee, and the 2 other FFA are national conventions. And kind of an interesting deal. They're going to Kentucky and then they're going to stop by in Indianapolis. So it's a kind of a stop along the way. And so what a great opportunity for 7 students in that FFA program. And WIDA is a conference on multi-language learners, and in Milwaukee, and Christy is going to that. And then the last one is ATAP, and I don't know much about that except it's a safety conference, and Joe Koskar at Philadelphia. That particular one has already happened, so we're playing a little catch up in approving this one, but it's okay. It's been on the radar and approved, but we're just doing the formality.
And that was funded by a grant as well.
Oh, good add. So those are the 5 trips. So that's our consent agenda. Good conversation all around. I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Any other questions? All right, we'll vote. All those in favor, please indicate with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on, we now come to the real meat of today's meeting, and that's our budget public hearing. It is a hearing, so at this time I'll open it as a hearing. And so Chris and Stephanie have the presentation for us. There obviously will be questions along the way. Maybe hold your questions if you can until we get done with the presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time to ask those questions. However, if there's something that's burning along the way, I think we could probably add a comment or 2.
Sure.
And then there is a section in here for public comment. Don't see anyone in the audience at this moment, but if that were to be someone, then we would open it up there. So, and then finally at the end, action is requested, and so we'll make a decision on what to do at that point. So turn it over to you guys and for the presentation.
All right. I'd just like to open up with highlighting that all of you have had a chance to take a look at this board, the budget notebooks that we put together every year for the school board. Thank you to Jennifer for her support in putting these together. We like to give those to you a week in advance, at least a week in advance, so that you have time to thumb through it and kind of get familiar with what's included in that. As you know, this budget is much more detailed than what we are presenting tonight. We definitely are highlighting all the key components of the budget. The way that these reports are set up, they run the same information a bunch of different ways, and so you can have a different look at it. So I just wanted to highlight that you all have your notebooks. You have a copy of the presentation in the notebooks, but we are here to highlight, go through a few slides and highlight the budget, and then answer any questions that you might have. Similar process that we've used in the
I've been
past.
carrying it with me, Chris, day and night. I have spaghetti on a few pages and then syrup from breakfast the next day.
I'm sure you have it on your nightstand. All right, let's dive in. So this is the hearing for the 23-24 Selah School District budget. Stephanie and I will be co-presenting tonight or today. It's almost night, I guess. So we'll just jump right in. Some of these, a few front slides are repeats to what we've had in the past to really set the stage for how the budget is allocated and how where the resources come from and how the budget is allocated the different based on our priorities as a district. So I'd just like to start here. This first slide highlights the board of directors and also the cabinet leaders of the district. We have many more administrators in the district, about 10 other administrators outside of us at the cabinet level. But I wanted to just highlight that very quickly. Our mission and our core purpose. We always like to mention this when we're talking about budget, because we don't just sit in our offices and allocate budget the way we think, well, we'll just put money here and put money there. We actually have student focus on everything that we do. Our mission, as a reminder, the Selah School District, in partnership with students, parents, and community, cultivates a culture of lifelong learning for all. And our core purpose being ensuring high levels of learning for all students. So we always keep that in mind when we're making decisions together as a cabinet, ultimately for the district. Our vision, the portrait of a graduate, as this is a reminder for all of you, our portrait of a graduate work happened, I think, 5 years ago. And basically our vision with this is every student is future ready by being able to collaborate, innovate, communicate, show empathy and resilience. And we also keep this at our core when we're making decisions, that this is our goal for every student in Selah. The 3 C's, our core beliefs, character, capable, and college and career ready for every student in Selah. Again, everything that we do and the conversations we have are around making sure that we achieve these things with all of our students here in Selah. Thought I'd put in a picture of some of our graduates.
Don't those navy
Last
gowns
year.
look so good?
This is our pledge, the Viking promise. So really, our goal is to meet the needs of the whole child by creating an equity-centered, engaging, and personalized learning experience in an emotionally and physically safe environment for each child in Selah. So when you look at the Viking promise, there are key components of this. So on the ship on the next slide, you can see that rigorous, engaging classrooms that's a key component. Positive behavior intervention and supports, family and community engagement, culturally responsive teaching, social emotional learning, and trauma sensitive practices. So there's a lot involved in meeting the needs of the whole child. And so these are the things that we have systems in our district, people that are working on this in our work every single day. So it's important to note as we talk about budget and how we allocate resources that these are key things that are considered. We always like to put our demographic information into the budget presentation. You can see there, this is for 22-23, right around 3,700 students. We're almost equal male and female. You can see there the percentages are very close. And then our race and ethnicity percentages are below, and they have stayed pretty steady, but they do fluctuate a little bit year to year. So what is a budget? And really all the things I just talked about come into play when we make decisions about allocation of resources. So a budget is the instrument which sets forth an annual financial plan for the achievement of the goals and objectives of the school district. So all of the things we talk about, our mission, vision, the portrait of a graduate, our core beliefs, all of those things come into play when we allocate resources. And we have ongoing conversations all the time about things that are working and may not be working as well, and how we can allocate over here, but maybe we're not going to allocate resources over here anymore. So those things come into play when we're providing allocations of resources using district priorities, like I said, as a filter in determining the spending plan for the year. So the budget is also developed using the district beliefs in the core of our decisions. Slide just talks about the puzzle, and Stephanie and I work the puzzle with the numbers once we get the priorities down and through all the conversations that we have with others. And we like to have our pictures in the presentation. Hopefully I have a better picture of this next year. Okay, so budget priorities, ensure resources, support student and staff safety. So I'm just going to highlight the key words in these. So student and staff safety, that we have that at the core of when we're talking about allocation of resources. We make sure that we're supporting our mission, vision, and ultimately the Viking promise for every child, like I mentioned. Protect basic needs for educating the whole child. We look at that, provide an equitable distribution of resources that recognize the diverse needs of all students. So priority in providing a personalized learning experience in an emotionally and physically safe environment. And a lot of this is pulled from our Viking promise. Allocation of resources to help ensure a focus on student engagement during the instructional day, meet legal compliance and educational standards, and then maintain fiscal stability, responsibility and stability over time. And that's a big one. I mean, it's that balance. You know, we want to make sure we meet the needs of all of our students, but at the same time, we need to maintain fiscal responsibility and stability.
All right, so we're gonna dive into the numbers here a little bit. This is a budget summary of the 23-24 operating funds. We operate out of all 5 funds, and we actually have one more that's not listed for private purpose trust fund for our individual scholarships that we hold for other scholarship organizations. So that's not on here, but these are our 5 primary ones. We'll start with the transportation vehicle fund all the way on the right side. That's the fund that we fund and replace our bus fleet with, and it's specifically for bus replacement and purchases. Next year, we actually have 2 buses on order right now that will show up hopefully next year. So that's that $450,000 that you see there in expenditure, along with $300,000 in depreciation revenue and interest on that fund. So that leaves us with just over $300,000 remaining at the end of next year budgeted. And then capital projects fund, that's the fund that we use to push our facility improvements and building new buildings and all that through that fund. We do have some expenditures in there for the wrap up of our transportation co-op. I think a little bit from John Campbell still, and some of the non-bond improvements that we have planned throughout that we'll talk about later. Debt service fund, that's where we fund and pay down our bonds. So you'll see activity in there for paying those down. ASB fund, that's our associated student body fund that pretty much is ran by our students at each building. That's what they use for clubs, athletics, all of those kind of programs. So they had quite a bit in there at the end of this year, so about $400,000. So they'll be slowly spending that down going forward. And then general fund is our primary operating fund. That's where majority of our business happens. Our budgeted revenue for next year is $64 million. Our expenditure is $66 million, leaving us with the overage of about $2.3 million. And we'll go into depth in the coming slides on what makes up that negative amount there, and then also the impact on our fund balance going forward.
Just have one add for this slide, the cap projects fund. You can see there that we have budgeted 2.2 million in revenues outside of interest earnings that we get on the money being invested. That is part of the state match funds that we're receiving on the transportation cooperative facility. We're targeted to receive a total of $4 million in state match. We're projecting that some of that's going to be received here before the end of August, but I just want to make sure you knew that were the revenues coming in that fund. We're not recommending a transfer this for 23-24 from general fund to capital projects because of our situation with the budget. So that is state match money coming in on a revenue side. As a reminder, the transportation cooperative projected to cost about $9.3 million, and $4 million is coming in state match of that total. So we're very fortunate that we're getting that state
One more
match.
note on capital projects, that ending fund balance, the almost 4.8, that Wilbur Rep donation that we were talking about, that 3.6 million is included in that. Yeah.
Okay, so to give you just a few highlights of this slide. So on the next slide, on the revenue side of things, we're looking at a projected increase in total revenues of 2.5% from prior years, so about 1.5 million. As a reminder, this is a net number here. So you think about, okay, we're projecting 71 more students next year, which is at the bottom of this slide. That generates so much money. The ESSER funds won't be coming in next year, so that decreases so when you're looking at the net, you're going to have some increases, some decreases. So a projected increase of 2.5%. From prior year, and the expenditures are projecting to go up 5%. So this is our issue that we'll continue to talk about, is where our expenditures are increasing at a more rapid rate than our revenues, which is a problem over time if you don't get that under control, because you're going to dip into your fund balance, your cash reserve every year, and you can only do that so long. It's like why we don't pay our house payment out of our savings account. You got to keep the savings account up. So that's part of it. The net projected reduction in cash reserve, 2.3 million, just to, as a reminder to what Stephanie presented, that's in the budget for 23-24 for your consideration. The projected cash reserve at 8/31/24 is projected to be right around 8.2 million, which is 12%. So as a reminder to the board, as you've adopted in prior years, a board policy that says that the minimum fund balance should always remain at 8% or more. We've been compliant over the years. We've never dipped between or below 8%. This brings our fund balance down to 12%, and we'll talk about what our 4-year forecast looks like here in a few slides. The certificated staffing for next year, we're looking at an increase of 3 staff based on additional higher enrollment drives more basic ed staff, but also our categorical programs are not increasing other than our high poverty LAP dollars at the high school. That's a piece of good news that we're generating about 340,000 in high poverty funds for the high school. So that includes some of this staffing. There's additional positions to be funded by that amount of money coming into the high school to support those students. And as I mentioned, the last meeting, I think, is where we have limitations on what we can spend that money on. It's to support students that are in need of additional support to be academically successful. So classified staffing, we're looking at 14 FTE more than last year. And part of that is levy allocations and the need to better support our elementary schools for supervision. We have added some additional hours to our kinder campus, preschool kinder campus, and the intermediate school campus, along with some other positions, part of the LAP high poverty funds through the high school and other program money that's coming in to provide for that staffing. And again, the enrollment projection, we're looking at 71 higher. Remember, we came in at 93 on average over projection this current school year. Well, when we're using a cohort survival method in calculating and projecting enrollment, that higher projection from this year goes into the calculation. And we are continuing to see growth in our enrollment since COVID, which is nice. We're fully recovered. So that's generating additional dollars there. Go to the next slide here. Changes in staffing.
Yeah, this is just a visual for you to see the changes in certificated and classified staffing over the past 5 years, certificated on the left and classified on the right. You can see through the 21 or typo on the bottom, the orange should be 2021 when COVID came along, and you see an increase in staffing the following year because we have those additional funds. We hired some more staff to address those needs, and they slowly taper back down. And what Chris was just going over for this year in the blue, you see the slight increase in certificated and classified.
So once the ESSER dollars are no longer here at the end of the 23-24 school year, we do have a couple of positions still being funded in that pot. That will be a decrease in staffing. We'll also really be dialing in what our staffing needs are moving forward past 23-24, and likely we will see a reduction through attrition in order to be sustainable on where we're at financially moving forward. So staffing is going to be a key thing that we're looking at moving forward to help us bring the overage down so we're at a balanced budget. Okay, so the key impacts driving you, this is probably a question that you've already written down. What are the key impacts driving a projected $2.3 million reduction to fund balance? So as a reminder, when the state adopts through the legislative process a budget, there's an inflationary price deflator amount. So 3.7% is what the state increased their allocations for certificated staff members, administrative and classified. So 3.7% of that basic education funded amount, 3.7% is what they increased it. But the reality is the actual costs of our staff are more than what the state funds us for. As an example, our funding next year for certificated staff members is $75,000 for argument's sake. Our average teacher salary is right around 82 to 84,000. So there's a gap with every person, and it's not just teachers, it's every classification, classified staff as well. There's this gap of what and this is just in the basic education pot. We also have other state funding that we get that provides some increase based on this inflationary price deflator increase. We get additional funds, but all of our categorical funds, Title I and Title III and Title IV, and all the money that we get, there's no increase for this in staff. And we have staff funded by those programs. So we have to, in reality, reduce our staffing in those pots of funds because we can't afford to continue to give the increases and have the same number of staff. So, and same with the levy. We're not getting additional money in our levy to fund any increases. And so right now we have our labor contracts speak to IPD, and this is the acronym IPD, and what we've negotiated with the groups that are settled on IPD or X percentage, whichever's larger. So we are paying these amounts. As an example, just so you know, as a board, all of our contracts are settled outside of our teacher contract. We're in labor negotiations with them. So I won't speak about them because we're in labor negotiations, but all the other groups are receiving 3.7%, with the exception of 2 groups are receiving 3% because that's what was bargained. So every person in the district is receiving 3.7 or less outside of the contract that's still open for negotiations. So that's one reason why this gap is growing, and it's costing the district more than what we're receiving in funding. So that's one reason why we're in looking at this scenario this year. As I mentioned, federal programs, we don't get the IPD increase, and funded versus unfunded staff, I talked about that. So special education, although we're projected to receive about $500,000 more in special education funding, we're still projecting they don't fully fund special education. So we're looking at a projected deficit of around $600,000 to $700,000 for 23-24. And we're not alone. School districts all over the state, I don't know one that operates in the black for special education. We're not fully funded, and it continues to be a priority at the legislative level. So hopefully they'll come back and improve it even more this next time around. Still not there. And our director has done a wonderful job dialing it in. So we don't have all this extra staff everywhere, but we're going to continue to dial it in the best we can.
And the salary gap comes into play in that program as well, because it's, SPED program, but we have the staff and we're being funded maybe a little bit additional, but the cost for that same staff member or that 3.7 is more than what we're getting funded. We might get 500 grand, but we're eating into that pretty quick.
The ESSER cliff, probably seen this in the news. It's real. All districts, and I have a slide later to show you the kind of the history with the impact on ESSER and the fund balance, but 23-24 is the last year for ESSER funds. So we'll have about 750,000 that we're anticipating going into 23-24. It will all be spent by the end of 23-24. We have it all, a game plan lined out for the expenditures, which Stephanie will talk about later. But a lot of districts are getting really into a lot of trouble because they've hired a lot of permanent staff with that funding. And now they're having to reduce staffing quickly after going into the 23-24 school year, depending on how much money they have left. We've been very cognizant or very conscious about what staffing we're coding there. And we have a plan for each one. Either the position is ending or it's being funded by a categorical program moving forward. So, but the bottom line with the ESSER cliff is this is the last year, 23-24. And in reality, it has helped us pay for things that we would have had to pay for through basic ed or through categorical dollars. Summer school, perfect example. We've spent ESSER dollars for the last few years since we've had ESSER dollars on summer school. We normally would fund that through levy or through categorical programs. That's just one example. So districts are having to tighten things up because we don't have the additional dollars to help support us moving past 23-24. We actually started at a higher number than the $2.3 million projected shortfall. We went back to the drawing board and cut $2 million plus more than this out of our MSOCs, which are our materials, supplies, and operating costs. We went through every department every budget and we said, okay, we're not going to do this next year. We're not going to do this next year. And pretty much everybody took some level of reduction. Our building budgets all took a 20% reduction again. So it's been a process. And the thing that I would remind us all about is our budget is $63 million budget. We're 82% people. So guess what? 82% people in $63 million budget. Staffing's your key piece. So if you don't get your staffing right rolled in and dialed in, then that gap's going to continue to grow.
It's just ballpark, what would you guess that 80%?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can come back with that information. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So just to finish off the budget balancing reduction. So I named a few, 20% to the building budgets, curriculum adoption money. We dialed that way back. We're putting those things on hold next year. Travel, limited travel for staff. We're really going to be looking at the travel that's going to be coming, travel requests coming through and discussions, and really keeping staff travel to a minimum. Student travel, for the national competitions and stuff, we're going to do our best to do all of that. That's why we're here, is to give students these opportunities. But for staff travel, we're going to really dial it in. Other departmental supplies, budgets and such, we did cut maintenance, capital outlay, and technology device replacement, capital outlay. All that got dialed way back because we've had the opportunity. I'll just use device replacement, Chromebooks. We've had the opportunity to spend our ESSER dollars and some levy money on Chromebooks, and we feel like we're in a really good place. So we're going to stall that for a year or two and then come back. Transfer funds to cap projects. As I mentioned, we're not recommending a transfer to the capital projects fund. We've transferred $400,000 a year for the last several years, and it was $800 prior to that. But this year, we're not recommending a transfer. We feel like our facilities, now that we're replacing a lot of our facilities, we can really dial that down right now and just do our best to take care of the highest need projects that we need to do for a while until we can get things back in control in the general fund. And the remaining, Stephanie will talk about the remaining ESSER dollars to backfill certain areas as well, which help us with these reductions. Well, we cut about 2 million, a little over 2+ million, probably around 2.5 million that we came up, but it also included some other strategic movement of things around so that we can make sure and afford the true essential things that we didn't want to cut. So I can bring more information.
When they ran the budget the first time, basically taking what we're currently doing and then just pushing it forward, it was scary. It was over 4 million, 5 million.
Right about 5 million.
So they went back to the drawing board and then I got more involved and said, well, this is where some areas where we should probably look that have little impact on the classroom. And so they were able to pull another $2+ million out of that. So that's already been done.
So what we're seeing here is after all of those, our conversations took place.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look at enrollment history. This is the past, I believe, 8 years. You'll see the trend, from 16, 17 to 19, 20, right before COVID, we were going up. COVID hit, we took a hit. But then all the way up till last year where we had budgeted 3,600 students. Like Chris was talking about, we came in 90 over that. So our enrollment has fully recovered from COVID. Looking at next year, using that cohort survival method to budget, our budgeted enrollment for next year is 3,671. If you go to the next slide, you can look at it by grade level on where those increases and decreases are as those grade cohorts move throughout up through the system. So we'll be 71 higher than what we budgeted last year. So we're looking pretty good on the enrollment side. And we like to budget conservatively as well. So that's hopefully a very conservative number.
You're projecting us 71 over this year.
71 over last year's budgeted amount. So it's a little bit below where we ended up last year. About 20.
71 more student FTEs that were budgeted the year before.
Because we budgeted
Not actual
36,
FTEs, but the budgeted FTEs.
We're
3,600
100 over.
last year, and we're 3,671 for next year.
So that continues to show a very conservative approach to budgeting the enrollment. And in a hopeful way, and maybe like the past year, we'll gain another 70, 80 FTEs of students that we didn't budget for.
And I mean, we use the cohort survival method because we do have those pockets of, really big classes, really small classes. So we use that. Like, I think we had a big class leave last year. And so we might have a smaller class taking its place, which is why we don't necessarily budget all the way up at that 3690 where we ended last year.
So the projection column there for 22-23 was 3,600, but we ended up with 3,706 or whatever. I can't remember that.
We ended up at 3690.
3,690. We're up 90 students and so this is 71 over last year's projection, not over last year's.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. All right, and so we also like to look at our revenues to expenditures and the trend over the past several years. Couple things that you might notice on this chart when you take a look is just the sheer amount of revenues and expenditures. So in 14-15, our budget for that year was $34 million. That was 10 years ago. So if you look at the budget for next year at $66 million, that's nearly almost double in 10 years. So the expenditures and revenues have increased quite dramatically over the 10 years. The second thing that you'll notice too is the revenues have always outweighed the expenditures all the way up until the past 3 years. The past 3 years, you'll see that our expenditures have exceeded our revenues, which is causing that dip into our fund balance that you see.
Is that happening in other school districts too? Like the increased expenditures versus revenue?
Yeah, I think a lot of our neighbors and even throughout the state, expenditures are growing more rapid than revenues, and everybody's feeling that pinch and doing staff cuts and all of that. So you see that even on the west side too, when they're consolidating schools and having budget issues. We're all feeling the pinch. Yeah.
Well, I'd even add to that, Indy, that as I watch the news and read about other districts in the state, there's a lot of districts that are in a much tougher position than Selah. And so we're thankful to have the team that we do that has thought conservatively, that has budgeted smart, and to constantly monitor where we're at and not engage in non-sustainable long-term commitments. And so, while we've got a shortfall on paper right now that we're dealing with, we're not nearly in a spot that a lot of districts are having to talk about.
And it's also important to know that ending fund balance, or that savings account, is meant for situations like this. Whatever variables or factors are involved, you do have at least in our school district, with the board setting a policy of no less than 8%, it gives you the cushion to be able to withstand situations like this, but you can't continue it. You have to put brakes on it so you continue to be responsible. That is not the case for all school districts. Not all school districts have that 8% limit. And so you may have school districts that don't have a savings account to be able to withstand tough economic years.
Question?
Okay, so just to highlight the different components of the revenues and the expenditure sides of the budget so that you can see kind of where the key differences are, increases and decreases. At the top for revenues, local, we have an increase of $2.1 million. And I have a little footnote there, moved 600,000 capacity. We have capacity on both sides of the budget, so it doesn't impact one way or another. And so that was part of that movement. Also, we have a new levy cycle, which is generating a little bit more money as well. State general, which is basically our apportionment dollars, is up 1.5 million. And again, we're projecting a higher revenue than last year. And that's what this increase is all about, along with the sped excess cost component that comes out of basic ed. And then levy equalization money is going up slightly, and those three components make up that general line item. The special money is going up 839,000 on the state side of things, and that a big portion of that is special education increase of the $500,000. Federal general is going down 38,000. More importantly, on the federal specific, that includes all of our federal categoricals like Title I, Title II, ESSER. ESSER is the main component of this that we will be decreasing for next year because we have a lot less money rolling into the last year of ESSER funds. So basically bottom line, $1.5 million or 2.5% increase on the revenue side of things. On the expenditure side of things, as we talked about, people were 82% people, increases from certificated salaries, classified, and employee benefits, all three. So about $3.5 million in increases there. Supplies up slightly at 287. And we really, when we went through the reduction process and all the conversations, we ended up cutting a lot of the contractual services and capital outlay. We also did quite a few cuts on the supplies side of things too, but the net, we still have a net increase on that side. So total increase of about $3.1 million or 5% for the expenditure side of things.
Almost $500,000 in purchased services reduction.
Yes.
Can you think of an example of what that might have been?
We can bring that detail back. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We had some capacity. So some of it was capacity we had built into the contractual services side of things. We normally build a capacity just on the expenditure side of the budget, and it's put into supplies and contractual services over and above the capacity we build on both sides of the budget for the unforeseen. When we went through our reduction process, we almost cut all of our capacity out of the budget because we were trying to get the number down. But we can take a look at that. And off the top of my head, I'm not remembering the detail of those, but we did make several cuts to that area.
Chris, would it be fair to say that the state general increase in revenue is 100% of it derived from the 3.5 or 3.7%?
Yes. That's, yes. Levy equalization dollars was a bump of 200,000. So other than that, that's what it is. Oh, that was my text. Okay.
If you do the math on this slide with the revenue breakdown and expenditure breakdown by categories, there still a $1.5 million difference.
All right, so now we show you kind of a handful of different looks at our revenues and expenditures. First up, we have our revenues of $64 million and how, or what areas that comes from. State general, so our basic ed allocation, CTE, makes up about 60% of our budgeted revenues coming in. State special make up 20%, and that would include our SPED programs, transitional bilingual, highly capable, learning assistant program. That's where those funds come in. Federal, so our title programs, any federal grants makes up about 8%. The difference this year you'll see is the federal stimulus. So those are our ESSER funds. We had our big 3 ESSER allocations, but then we also received quite a handful of ESSER funded grants through CTE and other various categories. So there's quite a bit of money there. But next year, our federal stimulus revenue is only 1% of our budget.
Wow.
Budgeted revenue. Local taxes makes up 7%, and local non-tax.
Is this a typical percentage breakdown?
I think so. I think it's getting back to a more typical. It was kind of skewed the past few years with the federal stimulus, but usually it's around 50 to 60% state general. Go to the next slide. There you go. And then we're looking at expenditures by category and where the dollars are spent. 45% is spent on regular instruction. Support services, about 18%. So support services are like our transportation, food service, district office, grounds and maintenance, that kind of support. Special ed, 10%. CTE is about 8% of our budget, and special programs is 16%. Then you'll see federal stimulus too is under 1% now of our budgeted expenditure. And the next slide will show you what kind of expenditures make up our budget of 66 million. Like Chris said, 82% is salaries. So 82% classified, certificated, and benefit salaries. 10% supplies, 7% purchase services, and less than 1% for travel and capital outlay. Then one last look at levy and LEA and how that's kind of spent on our students. 7.1 million is coming in levy and LEA. 56% is spent on teaching and learning, 17% on technology, 4% on safety, and the rest on co-curricular activities and athletics.
Okay, so one more reminder about levy dollars. We are required to meet the enrichment definition for all expenditures under the levy umbrella. So we actually have a sub-fund accounting, sub-fund 1. We have to put all of our levy and LEA expenditures on that side of the budget, and they all have to meet one of these areas. So when we're looking at funding things out of the levy, we always keep these things in mind because we need to be in compliance with the requirements on for enrichment. And we always, like to have this quote in our presentation about levy funds, because basically all districts are falling back to use levy funds to make ends meet. The state doesn't fully fund us, so our levy funds education in our district that is not sufficiently funded through basic education dollars. So it's those other things that we need full funding for that we don't get. So districts are forced to go to levies to help fund education. MSOCs, this is a slide we're required to have in our presentations. And basically bottom line with this slide is to make sure that the dollars that are being allocated through this MSOC pot are actually being spent on MSOC. So we actually spend more than what we're allocated in the MSOC umbrella. So this is outside of salaries and benefits. And so we basically, when you look at this slide, our funding for 23-24, we're looking at about 4.6 million, just over that in revenue for MSOCs. And we have 5.2 million in expenditures budgeted for MSOCs. And it's pretty typical that we have more than what they give us budgeted. It's kind of the same type of thing. We're not fully funded for a lot of things. And so we're having to budget more than that. We've made a lot of cuts to these areas. Okay, ESSER funds.
All right, so ESSER funds, this is just a recap of where we're at with the 3 big allocations that we received. As a reminder, we received about 8.7 million in ESSER allocation for these grants specifically. Next year, or at the end of this year, we'll have about $758,000 remaining to be spent in the 23-24 school year, and that will all be spent this next year. The next slide shows that worksheet that we have used to kind of budget out what we plan to spend those ESSER dollars on. You guys have probably seen this one before. And this, I think this is as of the end of June. But when we were developing the budget and doing the reductions, ESSER was kind of the pot of money that was hanging out there that we could use to kind of backfill some of those reductions that we made. A handful of the things that we had on our original ESSER budget we're still funding. So like our additional certificated classified hours for after school stuff, the mental health counselor, student assistant program, those are all still going to be funded out of those ESSER dollars. But some of the things that we cut from other sources, like our teaching and learning PD and technology, our band investment that Chris had referenced earlier in the Ted Brown, when we're talking about Ted Brown AP, our student supplies. So we don't charge, or we don't have students provide their own supplies anymore. and that's something that we funded as a district. Those are going to be funded from ESSER this next year. But going forward, of course, this is just a one-time fix. Like after we spend this money, it's gone. So some of those things are items that we're going to have to look forward into the following year and figure out where those are coming from if we're going to continue to do that, and figure out how to fund it.
Okay, so we're trying to hold our questions, but that's a perfect example
Let
of
it-
one that I wrote.
Let them fly.
So Mike, I wrote it down, just wrote it down. ESSER funds allocated, the remaining ESSER funds that are allocated, are they all to one-time purchases or improvements? And it sounds like no.
No. And some of these, and Chris can chime in too, some of these could be on the chopping block potentially. I mean, we're gonna have these discussions later on what we're looking at for the following year as far as cuts that need to be made, if it's staffing, if it's travel, if it's student supplies. Those could all be on the chopping block, or they could not be. It really depends. But a lot of these don't appear to be one-time expenditures to me, but that's something that we would have to look forward and plan.
And a lot of these things that Stephanie mentioned are funded by the levy normally. And so we have moved them over because we have the remaining ESSER dollars, and we don't want to leave, honestly, we don't want to leave them on the table. So some of the things that were funded by the levy, we moved over to ESSER for 1 year, and then they'll be reevaluated for levy funding for the future. Okay, so let's talk about the 4-year financial forecast. When I updated the financial forecast, I always take a look at, okay, the different pots of money on the revenue side. So state funding, typically we use an increase of 2% on state funded items. On the federal side of things, I don't use any inflator for federal. Federal either comes in as is or lower typically. So we don't do that. For salaries, we've used a 3% factor across for expenditures. And in some other expenditure categories, we've used 3%. So those are kind of the parameters and the elements that we've used to roll the 4-year forecast up. So we've just got a summary slide here of the different line items for the revenues and expenditures. Bottom line is this on the next slide. You can see we've included 22-23 as a first year highlighted here, and you can see that the actual beginning fund balance for 22-23 was just over $11 million, and the revised projected ending fund balance for this current school year, which we won't know until we close the books, is 10.5 million. Now, I update every month what that projection looks like. So we just received the apportionment reports yesterday. It updated the forecast. And the forecast right now, we could be as much as between 10.5 and 11 million. It's actually 10.8 million right now. So in the budget, it's 10.5. It's always good to be conservative. We could get a little bit more than that in any given year. So if we end the year at 10.5 million, we'll be at 16% fund balance. And as a reminder, the board policy says 8% minimum. So you think, okay, well, that's not bad. And that's dipping into our fund balance this year to get to 10.5 slightly. We about $550,000 into the fund balance to bring it down to 10.5.
That includes the 550 that we needed this year too.
Yep, that includes it. Yep, the bottom line 10.5 takes it out. Then the next year, 23-24, you can see at the top there right now in the draft budget, it's a hit to the fund balance of 2.3 million, which brings the fund balance down to a projected 8.2 million, which is 12.33%. So you think, okay, that's not the end of the world if we were at 12%, but we would have to not keep doing that, because if you look at this across the board on the cuts for 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27, those are large hits to the fund balance when we actually go in the negative in 26-27. So we know we can't do that. We have to find a balance and so that we can sustain and be fiscally responsible moving forward. So our goal is this next year, 23-24, we're going to have a lot of conversation with a lot of different administrators and program directors and department heads, and we have so many budget managers in this district. We have to talk to everybody and say, okay, we need to dial this in. What are the true needs? We'll look at our enrollment and staffing projections moving forward past 23-24 and decide if we need to roll those back even more so that we're not funding the full amount of staff allocated as long as we meet compliance with the state. So like we're funded 17-1 at the K-3 level. That includes specialists and everything. So that doesn't mean 17 per class. We need to look at that and make sure we comply with that. Otherwise, we won't get the money. Same with where we get funding all the way up at, as a district, 46 per thousand. So we need to make sure we hit the compliance number, but then take a look at, are there positions, special positions in the district that have really been utilized to provide additional support to teachers or students? What does that look like? How are they funded? And really take a look at all of those different pots. And we're talking across the board, staffing wise, classified, certified, administrative, every department that's not categorically funded. But so we'll be looking at that moving forward. So you can see here that in year 3 of 24-25, which is in the 4-year forecast, really year 2, we're down to just under 8%. We can't go lower than that. And so we have our work cut out for us.
The assumptions in this graph are based on current levels of revenue and current levels of expenditures.
Yep, and rolling up with the factors that I talked about with the 2% for state revenues and nothing for federal revenues and the actual for levy, local. And then down into the expenditure category, we use 3% for salaries and benefits. And we used, I don't think anything or very little on the supplies and travel and capital outlay of those. So those are the factors used to roll it up. And we're actually using it with the 23-24 budget. So we're not just picking numbers and rolling them in here. They're actually from what we've budgeted.
So if you're using our current revenues and expenditures to project these future costs, how do you expect our revenues and expenditures to change? Or
They won't if we use our current ones to project forward. So the point being here, we can't leave things status quo. We can't continue to operate with the same level of staffing and the same supplies, contractual services. We have to make changes so that we can be, but great question, Ninny. You're paying attention, I can tell. Thank you.
We can't count on the what ifs or the hope that somebody else is going to take care of a potential problem that is across the state. We can't bank on our legislature all of a sudden deciding to fully fund basic ed or change the salary allocation model or any of those other things that are putting school districts in this situation. So we almost have to go at it as all that we know and don't take anything else into consideration, almost a worst case scenario situation.
Okay, I think this next slide will provide a little context to where we're at. So if you look back, we decided to put in history back to 2010. So you can see I've been here since 2000. So this is 10 years after I got here. Our fund balance was sitting about just under 3.7 million. So that was just around 12% of the expenditures at that time. So if you go down the chart and you get to 2019, and that's highlighted in blue, you'll see at the bottom, I have a note there that McCleary happened. So if you remember the McCleary lawsuit, that's when additional funding was funneled into school districts and compensation was adjusted for the labor groups. And it was kind of I'll just say it was a little bit of a windfall back then. And we were able to bring our labor groups in to a better level in their compensation, put it that way. Then right after McCleary hit, ESSER hit. So COVID hit and we began receiving ESSER dollars in 2020. And you can see there in the purple, we have those 5 years that are ESSER related. So you can see that our fund balance actually grew from 2019 to 2020 by a couple $1 million, and then grew another 600,000 in 2021. And then we dropped 700,000 by 2022. And then we dropped another 600,000 in 2023. And now we're projecting to drop and drop and drop if we don't make changes. So really, it just holds true that ESSER dollars really, ESSER dollars have carried school districts along with other organizations for that matter. But really for Selah, we've been able to do a lot of things for students, additional things, these contracts we have with the ESD, with the mental health counselor next year and our student assistance program. There's things that we've been able to provide for our students as we've weathered the COVID storm. And additional support for students and catching them up on their learning. So it's a lot of great positive things with the ESSER dollars. It's just they had to come to an end at some point, and they're going to come to an end at the end of next school year. And financially, all school districts are in the same position to make sure that we stay stable as a district and fiscally sound. And so we wanted to give you that picture here on this slide. Hopefully that helps us.
To your point about the hiring of some of those positions, and a few slides back, you highlighted a bunch of them, the additional counselors and DO office support and math intervention. But we went into the hiring those positions totally upfront with those individuals that's going to end, right? I mean, we're not in a position of having to surprise people.
No.
We've been.
No surprises. Everything's been very transparent, and we've had a plan for every position that's been in and out of funded with ESSER dollars. And some were eliminated when people left, like our best instructional folks. We didn't riff anybody. When they left the district, we made conscious decisions to say, okay, this is a position we can reduce.
So,
They may still be there in future years. They just won't have the funding source of ESSER. And it's either going to be determined it's so needy of a position that we've got to find a way to fund it.
right.
Or we determine that it's not as needy and it's not the priority and we go a different direction. And if there's people in those positions, then our plan would be through attrition that they'd have the opportunity to apply for other things that they're qualified to do, which we do every year
Yeah.
anyway.
I guess the
No
essence of my
guarantees.
question is that we're not putting people in a uncomfortable situation and the district in an uncomfortable situation of having to have those conversations that, sorry, but the funding stopped.
And normally what happens is we have conversations up front with staff. If we know down the road this position's going to be eliminated, we're letting them know, hey, this is the time period we're looking at. And then when it's an elementary certified teacher, when those positions come open, we'll just kind of put a little note in their ear, hey, don't forget, we encourage you to put in for these other openings. And then that's how we've satisfied it as well. We haven't just said your job's gone, but in essence, we have said, hey, there's a limited time for this position. And we let them know that.
And some, we've gone to the point of, saying you're on a one-year contract or you're not itinerant, but what's the other term that we use?
Leave replacement.
Leave replacement, or that you could be at a school this year, but your position may change to a different location. You may still have a job, but it may not be the exact same job you have this year. We built in a lot of those protective measures to be able to assist the district as it navigates through this.
Good, thank you.
So on these forecasts and projections. Is there internally forecasts and what it kind of being ran right now of get rid of every previously ESSER funded? Are there numbers being ran behind the scenes of, well, we eliminate this, and this? This is this. Is there kind of something going on there that?
We continue to have cabinet conversations. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, Chris and I just talked about that this morning about that, is that we need to understand the cost of the difference of regards to our employee related cost. If we're going to get back to a place where the budget's so-called balanced, then what's that equate in the number of staff that we're going to have to adjust by?
Is the presentation current? well, what's going on? I mean, we're just gonna, you know, at the last minute, tell Colton he needs to fire 4 people, or, you know, whatever the case is. So, and I know that's not the case, but a little bit of added context, I think. We are, you know, trusted what's going on. What is, where are we looking at those kind of spots? 2% reduction in staff and a X amount, you know, here's how we're gonna flatten this thing out to where we can maintain.
Yep.
General balance.
Okay.
Yeah, the next, I think, 3 slides just gives a visual of that 4-year projection in different ways. You'll just see that in this one, the revenues are far shorter than the expenditures, and that grows over the next 4 years. The expenditures grow higher than the revenues are growing. And then the next one shows you the blue bars are the total expenditures, total budgeted expenditures, and the red line is the fund balance as a percent of those expenditures. So you'll see the huge drop decline in that
This
as
one's
well.
a really good example of the calm voice. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
So-
Doom and gloom, right?
Well, the assumption that I always like to say is that if you turn a blind eye to this, if you just don't even pay attention to it, and you just keep doing what you're doing, this is what's going to happen to you. So you have to adjust what you're doing in order to stop that from going down. And yeah, it may seem like we're calm because we've been through these things before in order, and now it's time to put some of those protective measures into place as we begin going through this year so that we stop that decline.
And I think it was 2008, 9, 9, 10, maybe even a little bit. There were some tough years there. That's probably why I sit here and I'm calm, because I think we've been through, like Kevin said, we've been through a budget reduction phase, and it's not fun, but it's a lot of conversation and it's a lot of hard work, but you get there. I mean, we'll get there. We're going to be fine, but we can't turn a blind eye.
I didn't mean to make the calm voices sound like.
No.
Not at all. Not at
I've
all.
got a lot of years' experience on that.
No. And the calmness also, if for the benefit of this district, is that you as a board at some point in time, put that line, you drew that line in the sand that we're not going to get below 8%. And then the way that the district has operated fiscally throughout the years has built a pretty healthy cushion in order to withstand challenging times and the unexpected. I mean, it's not like these is completely a surprise to us. I think when we started to run the numbers and see the amount of potential decrease in the ending fund balance, that's where we started to have further conversations and started to implement some practices already that we could slow the roll a little bit. But we've got a lot of work ahead for sure.
Well, and I look at it as you know, we talked about the last 3 budgets now have forecasted and have planned for some use of reserves. And one was covered by the increased enrollment, so we didn't have to. This last year, it sounds like it was a $500,000 dip. And I don't remember what the first year on that was, but it was a 500 or less so far. But now we're being faced with a $2.3 million dip. And to me, that's a big red flag. And so I guess the second part of my comment right now here would be that you mentioned having tough conversations next year in anticipation and planning for 24-25. And in my little basic brain says, why are we waiting? Let's start some of this now. And I know some of that's already taken place because you trimmed a bunch out the front before you even brought this to us. But I just wonder if there's more that could be started now instead of waiting for the lion's share of it next year. If it's really moving in that direction as quickly as that line shows, we're gonna be, you know, slippery slope real fast, and we're not quite there yet because we have the capacity to absorb it.
Yeah.
But maybe there's more we can do now instead of pushing it off to next.
Definitely, that's going to be part of our action plan. One thing I wanted to highlight too, and you brought it up, Jeff, is this current school year, 22-23, we would have been closer to hit the amount of money that we were projecting to dip into the reserve. We presented a budget to the board that was 1.2 million in the red last year. And we dropped what'd I say, $600,000. Well, we may, with our enrollment over projection, we did hire additional staffing in some cases, but that's for argument's sake, $1 million more than we would have received in revenue. So we would have been closer to this hit that we talked about during the budget time last year if we wouldn't have seen that additional enrollment.
We had a little windfall there.
Yeah. That helped us this year.
Now that enrollment is back to, kind of
Yeah.
where we expected to be pre-COVID, so.
But point well made about starting to do things now as we develop our plan moving forward. Travel would be a good example. We're going to really take a hard look at staff travel and keep that to a minimum, and some of the other things that we can do to keep costs down. I've already met with all the operational directors about it, and I said, hey, we got to hold the line here this year to start with, and then moving forward, we'll figure out where we can go. But they've already been notified. Keep your costs down.
True.
The other thing you don't do is that you don't hire additional people as you begin the school year or start the school year. As much as there may be a need or demand for specific things, really, you don't go into any type of contractual obligation for long-term with any additional employees. So each year brings different challenges, but these are the times where maybe in past years we could say, okay, yeah, we can handle adding more employees for a variety of reasons, but that most likely is not going to be where we'll be unless we have a huge amount of enrollment increase when school starts. So we won't be doing any hiring. That's another measure you put in place. Most of the challenges with doing anything now is our employees for the certificated ones are already under contract. So we don't have an opportunity to reduce there. But during the course of the year, we would take measures like to not increase unless it's like an emergency situation of some sort.
Well, and maybe this would be a place to add something you shared with me during, if a certified teacher moves on and leaves the district and we have an open position during that hiring process, some districts if I captured what you shared with me, Kevin, in order to reduce costs, they would hire and interview less experienced teachers and hire them potentially at that lower salary scale. Whereas we've always maintained a philosophy of hiring the best candidate, and irregardless of their tenure and their, how many years they've been in teaching. So consequently, that might cost us more. But if we're getting the best we can get, then that's a chosen strategy.
That's our philosophy. We want to have the best teacher that we can get.
Yeah, and if we want to get into each of the different makeup of each of the different groups, I mean, I would say within our certain classified units and our certified unit, we have very experienced staff. And so the more experience drives a higher amount of compensation and benefit. But the way the state allocates funds, it doesn't really matter. You get 75,000 plus their benefit, regardless. And so for school districts that have a makeup of employees that are below that amount, maybe they're less experienced, then they could potentially survive some of these things, where school districts like Selah, who have a experienced and well-educated staff, we have both, especially in our certified unit, very experienced, very well-educated. It's going to be problematic for us on that $75,000 per FTE.
If we go back to the mission of the district and some of our core beliefs, and trying to provide high levels of learning for all students, and, we want the best qualified instructor in front of our kids all day long. And so, while, there's always going to be effectiveness within the ranks of any organization, the general thinking is if you have more experience and you've got a better educated person, you're going to get better results.
All right, so I know we've been talking for a good hour now, and we have just a few slides left. So we'll
Okay.
try to quickly get through those so we have plenty of time for additional questions. So the budget challenges we've talked about. I've talked about the expenditures rising at a higher rate than our revenues, and also the salary gap, and the teachers is the one that I gave an example of, but we have a salary gap with all of our employees. The legislative changes necessary. We need fixes with the state's staffing allocation model that they use and the amount of staffing that they're providing. Transportation funding, they still have some fixes they need to make on that, so districts get fully funded in transportation. Special education, we talked about that. We need to be fully funded in special education. And lastly, provide consistent and equitable education resources as it relates to regionalization and experience factors. And we don't receive any regionalization funds now, but it's one of the priorities for the state. So we have some things out there. We're all involved in our state level organizations, which has been nice that they all align and have the same legislative goals every year. So that is nice. So they'll be helping us with that. The next slides, and I'll just run through these really quickly. Again, just kind of gives you a history, change in salary and benefit costs. So this goes back to 1920 up to budgeted 23-24. So you can see how those changes happen with salary and benefit costs and how they've increased over time the last few years. And again, just one little, just taking a look at that a little different way with certified, classified, and then the benefit increase all on one slide in dollars. And then ASB, do you want to talk about ASB?
So one thing that we're still seeing an impact from is House Bill 1660. And this is that fee waiver bill that came across, I think a couple of years ago. I think mid-COVID is when it hit. But our clubs, specifically at the middle school and high school, are feeling the pinch of this with those fee waivers. I mean, it's great because we're having great participation from our students. I think participation's increased significantly. But the pinch they're feeling is those fees aren't coming in from those that get the fee waiver. So when we have clubs that go to these national trips, state trips, all of that, that cost adds up really quickly because we send a lot of kids everywhere. You guys see that all the time. So they're feeling the pinch of being able to fundraise to afford those trips. And so one conversation we've had, I think this year going into 23-24 about helping meet that cost, but with some levy funds and support that through levy. And in certain instances, have them apply for that. There's still procedures that we're going to put in place for that, but finding ways to kind of supplement that lost revenue for those clubs.
All right, jumping into debt service fund, you can see there that the outstanding balance of our bonds at 8/31/23. We're just right at 59 million. So it's nice. I put the repeat news about our refinancing that happened in February of 2022. We're proud of the fact that we saved taxpayers' money, so we put it in one last time. Cap projects fund, we are, as you know, we'll be finishing up the transportation cooperative facility here in the next couple months. We're excited about getting that facility done and moved in. So that's really the majority of the projects here. We've also built in capacity for and the transportation facility is primarily being funded with state match money, as I mentioned, and leftover bond money. So once that facility is done, we'll have the Wilbur rep donation, and then probably not a very large balance of non-bond funds, but we'll take a look at that after we complete the project here in the next couple months. We'll take a closer look. The projects that we've outlined right now for 23-24, mainly building capacity in the non-bond side, but we also have a need to move a portable to the high school. We need space for teaching positions. We have the portable that's back here behind the Lynch gym that will be moved to the high school by second trimester. So we're working on that. So we have some money set aside for that move of that portable in the top section of this slide. In the bottom section, it's mainly just finishing up the transportation cooperative, and we just have a few loose ends on the John Campbell campus that are going on right now as well.
And I think you said earlier today what the capital fund balance is at this point, at this time.
Yeah, at this point in time, right now, we didn't have that in the oh, you have it right there. Yep. Yeah, so 6.3 million at the end of June is where we're at, but that includes the Wilbur
includes-
Rep, 3.6 million plus the leftover bond money that's going out on the cooperative, and then the small balance of non-bond funds.
If you get capital projects in here at 1.3,
Yeah, that's for non-bond projects, and 1 million of that is to move the portable. So on the next slide, on this slide that's up there that Jennifer had right there, that shows you that $1 million. So 1 million of the 1.3 million is to move the portable. And hopefully it won't be that much, but we just built capacity in there for that move. Shouldn't be 1 million, but we budgeted capacity. Yeah. Move and do all the engineering and design. It probably won't cost 1 million, but it's not cheap to move a portable. All the
That's a cheaper way
utilities.
to do it than
you're reading my
Utilities.
mind.
Mhm. Okay, I'll just finish up with this. So on the fees, proposed fee schedules, we are not looking at proposing any increases in our fees for next year. We also are continuing to pay $190 a day for our certificated substitutes, so there's no increase proposed there. And no increase on the tuition over at the preschool. Oh, 200. Oh, it is a $200. I forgot about that. $200 increase on the tuition. We're behind the market, so we're trying to inch it up. Okay, and then finally, just give Stephanie a little bit more kudos because I appreciate all the work that she does with around the finances. This citizens guide is the second year we have this in place, or maybe third now. Stephanie actually developed this, and it's a really good tool. I actually go through it every year when Stephanie updates it, and I think this is really nice. It helps explain the components of the budget and helps just the normal layperson understand it. It's complex. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it. So she's done a nice job with it. So
I think it's awesome. I haven't seen it. I tried to, just a side note, I tried to find it on our website today, and I couldn't find it.
it's on our business services page.
I was on the business services page. Maybe I just
We'll
missed.
double check it,
But
but it should be out there.
Yeah, check
should be
it
out
out. Maybe the
Thank you
link
for
is right
telling
there
us.
and I was just cross-eyed from reading the book.
That's good. So with that being said, we can open it up for additional questions before we close the hearing.
I had one question about decrease it. Doesn't be exact, I'm curious, but I was really nervous about it. I think it's
We met with high school principal and assistant principal Heather Burfine last year about this, and we didn't get hard numbers, but the athletic Brandon Gillespie, he's working on having our ASB secretary run reports by program and by activity to find out what the exact loss has been, because that's going to help us develop our process for really nailing down the total dollar amount we're going to have available every year for groups to apply for, and really see which areas have taken the biggest hit, which sports, which activities, and then we can better align. So we don't have exact numbers right now. We've requested reports by program so we can see.
I'd be curious about numbers.
Good question. Other questions?
So with the transportation building assembly being done, when is the date that done in operation? Yes.
That is correct. It's right before school starts. They are so-called ahead of schedule, and the but is electrical panels, which are on back order. And if those electrical panels get here is part A, and then having PP&L on site to be able to inspect and sign off is part B. So our contractor believes we'll have the electrical panels. They have a marked ship date on them, and that we should have them in plenty of time. What he's concerned about is PP&L because they do not give an exact date and time.
Okay, so what I was asking about that is at the end of the day, revenue expenditure. Yeah, do we see that for us operating in the black, the red, or break even?
We're really looking at break even. In fact, Stephanie and I are involved right now in putting together those pieces. And then we have a meeting with Union Gap folks, the transportation director and superintendent on August 10th. And we'll go through that. But our intent is to not make money off Union Gap. Our intent is to break even, but not having Selah support them either. We need to break even on the deal. So those are the things we're putting into place, and then we'll meet with them to go over in August.
And the benefit to the district is nice
The
transportation.
facility, yes. Looking good. So we'll set up another tour once they get done with the board, and so you can see the finished product. And we'll talk about possible open house at that.
Other questions, budget questions?
Slide 41, salary and benefit costs, obviously at this point, the projected number for salary increase kind of a target of ours or a worst case scenario, best case scenario, the medium. How do we kind of project that number?
So yeah, we've built capacity into the budget for the IPD and some additional capacity just to have, because you always want to have a little bit of a cushion. But you have to put a cap on that too. But we've pretty much rolled everybody over with their step increases and the IPD or whatever percentage they're receiving, all the groups that are settled. Those go in actual form. Each employee is actually rolled up and with the percentage attached to it. With the group that we're still bargaining with, obviously we had to build some capacity in there just to have some in there, but it's, we didn't build a ton. Yeah.
So what, you mentioned earlier, 3 additional FTE for certified and 14 in classified as additional people. What drove those increased staffing numbers?
And I think we have a slide on that.
And if it's, if it's as simple as enrollment,
Oh, it's
then
on
that's fine, but.
So, and I can, I'll have Jennifer share this information. So we had on the staffing side of things. Right here, okay. So on the certified side of things, we have a instructional support staff member at SIS. We have a large turnover of staff at SIS, and we have the need to provide additional support to teachers in the building. We did add that position, and 80% of that position is funded by ESSER this next year and 20% by our BEST grant through the ESDA, part of a consortium. So it's not through basic ed, but so we have other funding for that. And again, this may just be a one-year position, or it will be reevaluated, and it's going to have to be funded another way if it's going to be for more than 1 year.
Okay.
We actually had planned to hire a special services coordinator in the certificated area. We've deleted that. That was the only administrative recommendation as far as an increase, and that's not happening. We deleted that during our budget cut process. We hadn't hired it. elimination, we also eliminated a first grade dual language classroom because the numbers were really pretty low. We could do that, and it was a wash. We actually added an additional second grade position. Actually, no, that was a true reduction with the dual language. And we kept the additional support at second grade. We also added a special education position at John Campbell. That it's an itinerant position at the elementary level. So that position will be reevaluated for moving forward. We have a group of students, of the grade level moving up, needed additional support. So that position will be discussed for the following year after 23-24. And then on the classified side of things.
Isn't there one at the, with the lap high poverty dollars at the high school?
High school, yes, lap high poverty dollars. We had, and I didn't have it here because these are categorical.
Yeah, so there's really three. There's the one at SIS to support the high number of teachers there. SPED teacher at JCP.
Yep.
And then high school lap high poverty. Those are considered to be new, and those would show you those three in addition to.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the increases on the classified side of things, our complex needs grant funds additional support at the preschool level. Actually, Lee applied for that again. We'll be getting $171,000 for 23-24. We have a new migrant student advocate position funded by the grant, the migrant grant. We also have additional levy staffing that we added at SIS and Robert Lentz for duty coverage and EL support. And also we have additional classified with basic ed higher enrollment projection, to name a few.
And some of that is the at SIS, where we have a situation unlike any of the other schools that have some really unique needs with regards to before and after school supportive supervision of students. And because of the way that the school sits, the way the buses come in, when the buses come in, parents, there is a need for supervision that's unlike at any of the other schools. That has been really over the last number of years, the responsibility has been given to the teaching staff. I'm not sure that how the district has been able to do that for all those years, other than support by the teachers. But that's not a responsibility of teachers at the other buildings. And so we had to address that by adding classified staff and hours, which equate to FTEs, in order to support that supervision of students in a safe manner.
Thank you. Thank you. Dan, I don't know if you're still there, but give you an opportunity to ask questions or make comments.
I'm hoping you can you hear me okay?
Are you breaking up a little? Try again.
Are you?
Can't hear you, sorry. We can't hear you, Dan, if you can hear us. Okay, Dan, we can't hear you, so we'll just, I guess, move on. Other questions by anyone? Okay, Chris, thank you, and Stephanie, for your preparation and for putting this together. This is a wealth of knowledge and experience at play here, and the message is pretty clear in my book that, you know, we've got a situation, and, you know, you see it, and I can tell that you're nervous about it, and as are we, and so we appreciate the transparency and the honesty and the openness about it. We really do, because that's what works best. And so we're at a point in our meeting here now then, since we've seen this budget proposal and had a chance to answer our questions, that if there are no other questions, we'll close out the hearing, and then we'll consider the next item on the agenda, which is the resolution. So any other last minute thoughts or comments for anybody? All right, we'll close the hearing then. And then that would take us to the item C, which is the resolution itself, which is an adoption of the budget. And so this is our opportunity to adopt the budget as presented or have discussion about that. And I guess I'll start and you guys can chime in here. Given the fact that it's a $2.3 million deficit, that obviously you've done a ton of work, it could be 4.5 million, you know, but, and so I appreciate that. But, you know, we got the books on Monday. And so we've had a chance to look at them, but, you know, life goes on for all of us. And this is the first time we've had really an opportunity to really have a good conversation about it. So I guess that coupled with the idea that, you know, we're bargaining with our largest labor group right now. And I know that there's projections in here that there's some anticipated increases and some additional capacity built in, but it's still an unknown. And I guess I'm having a little bit of trouble knowing that it's 82% of our budget and we're being asked to, you know, adopt a budget that includes such a large percentage that we really don't know what that looks like yet. And then I guess the last thing would be that it's July and by state law, we still have a month to work through this a little bit. And I guess I would propose to everybody here that we consider tabling the adoption at this point so that we can study it some more. Maybe we can, you know, learn more about it. And we would maybe ask the district in the meantime to, you know, look again, because I'm a proponent of why wait? Let's see if there's some things that we can do now. And I know you've done a lot of that already. But if we have a little more time, maybe there's some more, you know, I don't know if there's any more low hanging fruit out there, but you know what I'm saying. In the meantime, and then table the resolution for now and bring it back in August. Might be that this is where we go and this is what we adopt, but maybe there's some changes that might come forward. Maybe there'll be some, you know, some more to report on them that will be more concrete from bargaining efforts by everybody, and we'll be in a better place of having a little more certainty in some of these variable areas. So that would be my thoughts. Everybody, your chance to jump in here and add to that.
What's the date?
So the deadline for us to have it adopted or approved by OSPI is August 31st.
Wouldn't,
No, we could come back on the August business meeting. We'll make time to do it. And we appreciate where you stand on it. In my 23 years here, this is the largest deficit budget that I've ever presented to the board for approval. So I understand. We understand. I think it's important for us to move forward with our eyes wide open and take a look at things and see, just strategize more. And I think there's a lot of, I think we will make time to do it before the August meeting, and we'll bring back additional information for you.
I love Chris. Not always 22% now. The current negotiation, obviously, you know, other than 2.5 million, which is not terrible at this point, the certified contract, will we know anything closer to that date, or I mean, are we negotiations currently happening? want to be settled, and we have a goal, we want to be settled, and is that anywhere, shape, or form kind of common thought between the two parties at this point?
Well, our next session is is August 3rd. And our goal is to get done as soon as possible. Our goal is always to be settled before school starts. I mean, we don't want to have this going into the next school year, and we want to make sure we can settle a fair contract with them before school starts if we can. It doesn't always happen that way. And I believe their interest is to get it settled as soon as they can as well. So hopefully we'll make some progress on August 3rd, and then we can come back either at the special meeting with, I don't know. Yeah.
If there's a need for a special meeting or use another meeting, we've got retreat later on in the agenda. Might be a discussion item for that.
Yeah.
Well, it's been brought up by a couple, and I'll just reiterate. The last thing that we want to do is put the district and you in an uncomfortable situation, time frame wise, and, so that you're not able to prepare properly for the new year coming up and all of those things. So, that's important to us as well. So as long as you can deal with and work within that time, the tabling idea, then we would maybe consider moving forward with that.
I think we would support that as well. If the decision of the board is to table and move it down to August, Chris and I would support that. Stephanie as well.
All right. Dan, give you one last chance if you're there.
I am here. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've heard the entire conversation, and you've asked the questions that I wanted to ask, and I agree with the idea of tabling this until the August business meeting, or unless there's a need to do one sooner than that.
Okay, thank you. With all of that being said, then we'll need a motion and a vote. So I'll make the motion that we table the resolution to adopt the budget until August. That resolution number is 2023-20. And so we'll table that until the next month. And so any further comments, by anybody? Otherwise, we'll vote. All right, the vote is to table the resolution until August. All of those in favor indicate with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's table that. Thank you very much for that flexibility. And please understand, it has absolutely nothing to do with, the preparation or the trust or the expertise that we have in our district. We are blessed and we are very, very fortunate to have the team that we do. And so thank you so much for that. And I think a month from now, we're going to have a nice, easy conversation to, come back to this and put it in.
Thank you.
All right, good. Move on now. We have a student board representative with us. So Indy, this would be your opportunity to share what you want to share.
I mean, I'm not in school right now, so not much. I'm having a great summer. I hope you guys are too. Yeah, I don't know what else to share.
Okay. What is the biggest takeaway from this budget project that we've been discussing for the last hour and a half?
I don't know. I just think there's so many ins and outs that you don't like. I say this all the time, but there's so many things as a student that you don't see. And like, this is, I think, the biggest thing I've experienced so far that we don't see, like how much money goes into things and all these different moving parts. And it kind of hurts my brain, to be honest with you. But like, I'm
But
glad.
you're not
to-
alone there.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad to be here and learn from you guys and hear these conversations and these questions. And so, yeah, just thank you for the opportunity to listen and answering my questions. And yeah.
We're glad you could join us today. Yeah, glad you're having a good summer. All right. Okay, we'll move on then to the financial status report. As if you're not tired of talking about finances.
All right, some more finances.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the June financial status report, 83% of the way through the school year. So we got 2 months left in the fiscal year. You'll see our revenues, we have received 76.6% of our revenues, and expenditures, we've spent 78.6. So I think last month we brought it to you and it was about a tie, neck and neck with revenues and expenditures. For, just a reminder, for our apportionment, we get paid on a schedule. So June, and each month we get a certain percentage of our allocation. So June is usually one of the lowest at about 6%. July, what we just saw come in yesterday was about 12.5%. So we'll see that number kind of catch up to our expenditures in July and August. Our ending fund balance is $8.7 million. And then one thing to note on the second page is for debt service. In June, we had our second debt payment. So you'll see that come through with an ending fund balance of 1.6. Debt service. Any other questions on fund balance? Finance, anything?
I'm with Indy. My brain hurts.
I just had one other quick thing on the reports for me. We had a successful surplus sale on June 28th.
Oh, yeah.
We took in $28,992. 12,000 of that was bus sales. We sold 4 buses. Pardon me? Jeff didn't buy a bus.
Nope.
And anyway, just a big kudos to our district office staff. A lot of them pitched in, and our custodial staff, Chris Harris and crew, and our maintenance staff. Got a lot of people over there working the sale, and it was actually it was kind of a fun day. And it was hot over there though. But anyway, so that's the largest sales we've ever had in our surplus sale.
Very nice.
That's all I had for today.
All right, thank you. Move on to our superintendent report.
No report from me tonight,
Wahoo.
unless you have any questions.
No, I don't. Hey, we're on
the record.
we're on a roll. Oh, my God. We're on a roll now. Okay, board communications. Jamie, you're up.
Just briefly, this is my 10th time going through this, the budget stuff, and Chris. Stuff, it's been fun. A lot of kind of high level, in-depth concepts and put them in. Even though it's kind of a boring situation, you guys do such a good job of making this, make sense to, it's like us.
Thank you. Others? All right, well, I guess I skipped one, didn't I, Kevin? The board retreat. Board retreat, let's talk about that.
So thank you for all of you who've individually put your dates in, and the date that met everybody's schedule for a proposed retreat is the 15th of August. Okay, and if that all works with you, we will use that as a plan to move forward to build an agenda. So if you have ideas for the agenda, things you want to see, obviously, I think we've identified one tonight for further study. But if there's other things, please get those ideas to either Jeff or I, and then we'll work on building an agenda for that time. The one question I have is time. What time frame are you looking at? It being in the mid-month, is that one that you want to do early in the morning, or is it one that you would like to do in the afternoon, evening? I think we had some discussions about the possibility of an afternoon, evening. But I just want to make sure we have the times identified.
I think we initially threw out 4 to 7, if I remember right, but.
Is that going to work with everybody in their calendars?
That works for me.
Okay,
Thanks, Dan. Joe, that worked for you? All right, very good. We'll work forward on that then.
okay, 4 to 7. And it's at Jamie's house. So I'd like to just thank Jamie for hosting. That's really good of you, Jamie. Thank you very much for that. And we look forward. So, all right, more to come on the retreat. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Anybody? All right, with that, I think we've accomplished our mission tonight. Thank you, everybody, for the good conversation, the good meeting. And we are adjourned. What was that?
Good to see everybody.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you being on.